You're listening to The Authenticity Show, where you get to eavesdrop on great conversations about health, creativity, and the quest for excellence. Your hosts are Carlos Casados and Satch Purcell. Before we get started, I'd like to remind you to subscribe to The Authenticity Show wherever you get your podcasts, if you haven't already done so, and find us on social media. That means like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and check out our YouTube page. And you can find our website at authenticityshow.com. This episode is part one of a series on cognitive strategies, and it's about nootropics. Nootropics, sometimes referred to as smart drugs, are herbs, supplements, or pharmaceuticals that improve cognitive functions, particularly executive functions, memory, creativity, and motivation. In this introduction to nootropics, Carlos and Satch will discuss some of the more common, safe, and inexpensive nootropics that are readily available. One final note here, we are not physicians, and this episode should not be taken as medical advice. We are simply sharing personal experiences. Always consult a physician or medical professional before taking any supplements.
Good evening, Satch.
Good evening, Carlos.
So I hear through the grapevine of my mind that we were going to talk about nootropics this evening.
That's right, nootropics. It's kind of a hot topic these days, but it's not hot enough.
And it's not a hot pocket like we've said in the past.
Yeah. So we got to get into this topic. This is something that I think people that tune into this show are going to find very, very interesting and actually very usable probably right away.
Yeah, because for many, the topic of nootropics is it's a bit overwhelming because there's a lot to know, first of all. And I think people get overwhelmed by not only just the sheer amount of possibilities for what's out there, but how much to take and, whether or not this is going to have a cross interactions with other things they're doing and stuff like that. So I'm hoping that what we can focus on is the way to make the pursuit of exploring it simple, not complicated. So this isn't one of those things for people who are old hat. This is for people who really want to get started and learn about it.
Yeah, and try some practical things and see what works for them, and not be bombarded with too much information. And this is a topic you really know quite a bit about. I mean, we've had some great conversations about this. I kind of go to you for the nootropic stuff, and I just kind of rely on that. And then I've tried a lot of it, and these are things I rely on quite regularly. Some of it I've explored on my own, and we've had some conversations about. And I like to mix a lot of Chinese herbs with those kinds of things, and also just think about some regular everyday types of things that might be easy to overlook. So we'll talk about those. Yeah,
for sure. And, of course, it should go without saying, none of what we're talking about is a recommendation, a prescription, or any kind of should be construed at all as medical advice. It really isn't. None of these things are meant to be taken as cures or even to suggest that you should do it. It's really up to the individual to make those decisions for themselves as informed adults. And of course, as with anything that you're putting into your body, you should do your own research. You should not only do what you can to figure out what all the safety precautions are, dosage levels, and so forth, but assuring that you're getting a good, clean source with maybe third-party testing, and then even on top of that, maybe consulting a medical professional if you have any doubts whatsoever.
Yeah, and the other thing I want to add is anybody who decides to get into this topic, remember, we're having people eavesdrop on our conversation, and hopefully it leads to new explorations and avenues for people.
Discoveries.
If you are going to do something like this, also be smart about it. Go easy in the beginning, right? Take a lot less than you need to and try it out, because I do.
Yeah.
If I try something new, I go real easy. And there have been times when I've been real thankful I did.
No results is better than bad results. Always.
Definitely. You just treat it like chili peppers, right?
Yeah.
You don't know how it's going to be on the toilet the next day. So go easy. And then if it works out, the next time have two,
Yeah.
So let's get into the topic. I think the first obvious question that people are going to have is, what are these things? So let's get that out of the way, and then we can dive into it.
Absolutely. So nootropics, nootropics, P-I-C-S. These are considered substances that have an effect on your cognition. They're things that can particularly affect memory, short-term and long-term, your ability to focus on the task at hand, improving the speed of your mental processing. Sometimes people who get a little stuck on their speech, when they use certain nootropics, they'll find that speech is kind of like freed up a little bit, like the patterns of speech within are loosened, and they're able to speak more easily and communicate more. Also creativity, like people who are into problem solving or generating imaginative out-of-the-box ideas will get a lot from nootropic support. I don't know about you, but I saw the movie Limitless.
Yes, absolutely.
And it just sparked every bit of my childhood desire for magic potions to make me have superpowers.
Right.
Great film. And remember the for those who haven't seen it, the story was about a very average Joe who was stuck. Maybe you could call him, I don't know, an ADHD kind of person who was just sort of not really performing at a level he could. He was trying to write a book and he was stuck in that, and he was having a hard time with his family and his girlfriend. And then he finds out about this experimental pharmaceutical, and he takes that pharmaceutical and boom, he writes this book like overnight, and he becomes, several times smarter than he normally is. And then it wears off and he wants more of it.
Yeah.
And it gets more and more complicated. It's a great story.
Great story. And it was a good series too.
Yeah, they made a series out of it too,
which I really enjoyed. I was so bummed it got canceled.
And I think I think the model for that limitless drug, like what they were using to use as a creative stimulus for the idea, I think it was modafinil or adrafinil, which
Modafinil
sometimes
or
people call Nuvigil. Right.
Yeah.
And people use that for things like ADHD and for staying up late when they have to, like truck drivers and pilots and
I know that they use things like Provigil, which is kind of the earlier version, for people that have like narcolepsy, things like that fall asleep. So it does boost attention, concentration, these kinds of things.
And you can fall asleep on it. That's the thing about modafinil and adrafinil, is that even though it will make you not feel like you need to sleep, all of a sudden the sun's rising, you're like, I'm fine. If you intended to go to sleep, you can. Because you can sort of, it's a bit like some people experience on tea.
Okay.
They can take theanine or tea, and they can be very alert, or they can say, it's time for bed, and lay down, do some breathing, and then they're asleep.
Yeah.
That's not true for everyone. Some people drink tea and they cannot sleep. But more often than not, they find that with adrafinil and things like that people, when they want to go to sleep, they can.
Yeah. So Carlos, what let's start with maybe one of your favorite beginners nootropics that somebody could try. Tell me about it.
Sure. And before I do, I just want to say that the things that I've picked for this episode are things that I know have they're easier to attain, not so expensive, work well in combination with the other things I'm going to recommend, and they're safe. I say relatively safe, meaning there's low abuse potential, very low in negative side effects, and most of these things are supplemental, and you can take them more long term, like having a good source of magnesium, for example. Now, magnesium, as I understand it, is the precursor to probably about 40 different chemicals in the body, brain chemicals.
Okay.
And so what most people do is they take a low-grade, low-quality kind of magnesium that's cheap, and what happens? They get diarrhea. Milk of magnesia and all these things that people take will cause bowel movements, right? So it can be a little inconvenient if you take it during certain times of the day. But magnesium glycinate is a form that you can absorb fairly easily, and magnesium orotate. It's a little more expensive. I go for the magnesium glycinate at night because it relaxes my smooth muscles, and it helps me to stay asleep a little longer than normal.
Okay.
So, as you know, I struggle with my sleep. So I take it nightly because it just helps me get a little bit more out of my sleep. Calms the heart, calms the smooth muscles of the body, and it contributes to my brain recovering the next day and being able to concentrate, because I do need to concentrate pretty hard all day when I'm doing work with clients and stuff. Then in the morning, I take an extra source of magnesium called magnesium L-threonate. That's an amino form. The threonate, they say it's a vitamin C-like substance to the body. It works with the cells, but it improves the absorption. And specifically, I think the trademark is Magtine or something, but magnesium L-threonate is the chemical form name for it. And I find that when I take that in the morning, it supports my ability to focus. It's safe, it's nutritive, it's good for your bones, it's good for your nervous system. It helps your neurons to build and support. It helps with your brain chemistry.
Okay. So the first one is magnesium, and there's two forms. So just to kind of review here.
Two forms.
Magnesium glycinate at night.
Yep.
And then in the morning, you're taking a magnesium L-threonate.
Correct. And since our American diet, the standard American diet, aka the SAD diet, is low in magnesium generally, it's good to supplement with magnesium, they say.
Yeah, and I would say just for a kind of a fun visual image, you know, if you're into camping and survival skills, they talk about a magnesium ferro rod. Those things that you start a fire with. Remember, magnesium is combustible.
Yeah.
So think of it as providing, if you have the right forms, you know, you're providing your brain, your brain cells with that internal combustion to do what they need to do. You know what I mean? It's just kind of a nice little image.
I love it.
That's what I think about.
I love it. I'm going to think about that tomorrow morning. Thank you.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, no, it's great. And I think another supportive nutritive is the omega-3 fish oils, or just omega-3s in general. But, you know, it was you that mentioned to me one time that you were reading about our ancient heritage and how when many of the human beings died off on the planet, where they survived was more towards the coastal areas.
Yeah, that's right. Off the eastern coast of southern Africa.
Right.
Yeah, and they've genetically mapped all humans on Earth to that region, those people. So we came from sea-dwelling people.
And it, you know, many have said, researchers have said, that one important component to the development of our brain in size was the fact that we took in more omega-3 fatty acids, that our brains got bigger and increased our capacity. So it follows that we would do well to take more omega-3 oils into our bodies, especially since our modern diets are far too rich in inflammatory types of oils.
Correct.
The 6s and the 9s, and then other things that are not good at all.
Yeah.
You know, highly saturated and hydrogenated oils and so on, right? And even more toxic oils like the cotton seeds and soybean oils and rancid oils because they're not managing it very well, and canola, which you know I have a personal issue with. I don't like it. Bad stuff. So it makes sense that since we need a balance of 3, 6, and 9, that if you just add more 3s, since 3 is harder to come by, you can almost guarantee that a person's low in 3.
Yeah.
So you might as well take more 3 because it won't hurt you. And if anything, it's going to help you manage inflammation in your nerves and in your tissues. But it also has been shown to improve memory over the long term, like when you take it regularly. It's been shown to help modify depression to some degree, to lessen it, and to just generally improve well-being. So I take it 3 times a day.
Yeah.
I take it, you know, probably 3,000 on average a day, because that's one pill. One of those little pills is 1,000. It's a little gel cap or soft gel. And I take it 3 times a day.
Yeah. You know, I want to add to this too that there was a study done, and I forget who did the study. It's been a little while since I read it. It was not a big study, So, bigger, better designs, of course, would be needed. But it was really eye-opening. And they took a group of people that had traumatic brain injury. And, it's difficult to recover from a traumatic brain injury, right? The central nervous system doesn't like to heal very well. And what they did is they took a group of people who had traumatic brain injury, and while they were in coma, and, through the recovery process, they're on feeding tubes. They gave them a regular dose of omega-3 fatty acids. And they didn't even use a high quality type of oil. It was a kind of a general, not too expensive oil. It wasn't like salmon oil from, Alaskan salmon oil. It was kind of something, standard. It was fine. It was omega-3s. And the difference in the outcomes was ginormous. Now, I'm somebody, I've worked
That's the technical term.
I've worked, ginormous. It is. It's all the researchers were using it.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
I've done some rehabilitation with people that have had traumatic brain injury. Not a lot in my career. That wasn't kind of my area. I've dealt with a lot of stroke, things like that. From my experience, seeing, because I saw some video of some of the people that had recovered. Wow. It made a very big difference, to the point where I was very, very impressed, and the results were very impressive. Again, it's a small study, but we're talking about taking two groups of people that have had brain damage from an injury, and the only difference is one of them got fish oil.
Yeah.
And the outcomes were these people were more functional in their life. Their life was better because they had fish oil during the recovery process.
Yep.
So if it can do that, with people that have had actual brain damage, I could take some fish oil. And, this is a good time to remind people that, if you're interested in this and you want a little more guidance, there are lots of healthcare providers out there that have really good access to good information and have some good recommendations.
And this is a recommendation. Do your own research and consult others. Don't do one and not the other.
Yeah.
Because you can't ask good questions if you're not doing some research on your own.
Yeah.
And at the same time, you don't want to be like, I don't know, diagnosing yourself off of WebMD or some stupid thing like that. That's going to get you in trouble. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Don't be like some of those people who get themselves in trouble. But I do have some recommendations for a few sites to begin looking. There may be some other additional sites, but I actually wrote down a few websites that I would definitely recommend as a beginning, process of exploring. So one of them is examine.com. So examine.com is pretty awesome. Of course, you should always ask Wikipedia, because Wikipedia may not be the be-all and end-all, but it's a good place to begin looking for links and places to jump off into.
Also, you can scroll down and look at the resources.
That's what I'm saying.
And you can go check those out yourself.
Exactly.
And it's a good starting point to start finding information.
It's a hub, right? Another one is medlineplus.com, nih.gov. And by the way, there's a lot of subheadings in that one.
It is big. I mean, it is the National Institutes of Health. It's
correct.
Huge.
It's
It's
very
gigantic.
big, but it's a good place if you're going to do some research. And then, of course, there's healthline.com, which is another place to kind of. And so I'm sharing what I do when I want to look at, well, how much should I be taking, and what do I need to know about these supplements, and what are the studies, and what did they find? What was the range of dosage for an adult male around my age looking to work on that particular thing? And it's a starting point. I start to make notes from that place, and then, I'll proceed from there. That's my process, right?
Okay.
As far as purchasing, I go through Amazon.com because they have quite a lot. And you can compare and contrast dosage levels, concentration, amounts of capsules in tablets, in the how much it costs, and bulk, and so on, right? Different forms. I use nootropicsdepot.com. That's another one. Bulksupplements.com. Relatively good source of the pure thing. Sometimes the powders themselves without the capsules, so you get more of it for less.
Okay.
And then there's iHerb, like IHERB.com as well. And then for more Ayurvedic sources, things like tryhealth.com, banyanbotanicals.com. These are sites that I've used in the past because they tend towards mostly organic. They have a high degree of they seem to have a high degree of integrity about their sourcing and purity and pricing and all that. So those are good starting points.
Great. All right. So fantastic sources. So I'm sort of keeping track and reviewing here. So magnesium glycinate, magnesium L-threonate, and a good quality omega-3 fatty acid source like fish oil.
Yes.
Something like that.
Then we all know that caffeine can increase focus. We know that.
Oh,
It's
yes.
well known. So guess what? It's a nootropic.
It sure is.
And caffeine is derived from coffee usually. Caffeine, right? But there's another amino acid form that's very similar to caffeine. And this one a lot of people don't realize is out there.
Okay.
L-theanine. Or
L-theanine,
you want to
love
pronounce it differently? L-theanine. Any guess to where that comes from? Tea.
Coffee.
Right. So
tea.
coffee is caffeine and L-theanine or theanine is from tea. So theanine has a slightly different property to it. It can be stimulant and it can be a relaxant, meaning some people, when they take it, get very relaxed, calm. It's one of those things that you can potentially, I say potentially because everyone's different, but you can take this before bed. It's in a lot of sleep formulas.
It is.
And yet, it's also in formulas for focus.
Isn't that
Go
interesting?
figure.
Yeah.
That kind of makes it sound like it's a bit of an adaptogen, a substance that can either ramp things up or regulate things and play things down a bit, right?
No, you had once mentioned to me on one of our runs that L-theanine creates alpha waves.
It increases the alpha wave activity in the brain. Yeah, absolutely.
Which is something that you'd see more during meditation.
Yep.
And so think of meditation as something that could either help you sleep or help you concentrate.
Absolutely.
And funny enough, I just took some L-theanine this morning. I had a little bit of a stressful day ahead of me, and I had a great big bowl of amazing high-quality matcha, which loaded with antioxidants and L-theanine. And I took L-theanine supplement.
Nice.
And that combination, I love that combination. It's great.
A way to use L-theanine if you want to modify the effects of caffeine is just to take it together with your coffee.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, a cup of coffee and
they sometimes call that smart caffeine because it reduces the jitters of the coffee and maintains the focus element. And I have tried that many times and it's powerful.
I have too.
Man, a cup of coffee and a L-theanine.
I like to say that that combination gives you that peaceful, easy feeling where you're awake, you're alert, and everything's firing on all cylinders, but you're also peaceful. Things are going at an easy pace.
Yep. It's the best of both worlds.
It's just easier.
Yeah, totally. I think
what
it
I
is the
find.
best of both worlds because I don't like feeling jittery. I do like feeling focused.
Yeah, definitely.
And I like feeling energetic, but I don't like feeling hyper.
Yeah, who wants to be amped when you could be focused and calm?
Yeah.
That's nice.
And, what I notice is that it kind of sneaks up on me a little bit. Suddenly I'm having a conversation with someone and I just feel this intense flow of language coming out of me. And I get excited and I feel very enthusiastic. So there's a little bit of, emphaticness, I guess, in my speaking. And I feel really geared up and ready to solve problems.
Yeah.
Which is, again, one of the qualities of nootropics is problem solving. So L-theanine, 100%. Acetylcholine is one of the chemicals that go in the brain that allows for the ability to concentrate, form thoughts, focus, things like that. It's one of those things
it's actually a neurotransmitter.
it's a neurotransmitter, absolutely.
Yeah,
And
ACH.
and so choline itself is a supplement you can take, and there are different forms. There's citicholine and just choline, and there are varying degrees of digestibility, so that the net result at the end of how much choline you actually get in your brain might be different depending on the type of choline you're using. Just like I mentioned about magnesium having different forms and digestibility, the same is true for choline. Sources of choline are things like eggs. You ever heard that recommendation that, you should have a couple of eggs before a test, in the morning, right? Why? Because it's going to support your ability to focus. Or you could take a single or 2 or 3, that range between 1 and 3 choline supplements. And my favorite form of choline, because it is the most absorbable, is the alpha GPC.
Alpha GPC.
That is a form of choline that I find works the best. I have, in my experience, there's no mistake. When I take alpha GPC, I feel it.
Yeah.
The other ones, maybe not.
I do too. If I take alpha GPC, I'm surprised at how well it works.
Yeah.
I'm really surprised.
It's usually like at least 3 hours of good focused time for me.
Yeah.
So I love that about it. So that's something you can take. It's very supportive. It's very nutritive. Very few problems can come up from taking it.
This is basically, it's not exactly a food, but it's a food. You know what I mean? It's more of a food category.
Like we said, it's bits of food that have a sort of a pharmacological effect when taken as individual substances.
Exactly.
So there's that. And phenylalanine.
Phenylalanine.
Yeah.
Spelled with a PH.
With a PH, like fat. It's totally fat. So L-phenylalanine is one form.
Okay.
This is something I took many years ago when I was working my way through depression.
Oh.
Why? Because I had read that it boosts serotonin. It's a precursor to the brain producing more serotonin.
Okay.
And, you have to take the correct amount. If you take enough, you will feel very alert. Okay. If you take too much, you'll feel like you've had too much coffee. So use with caution.
Okay.
It won't hurt you, but you won't feel comfortable for a little while. It's a bit like having too much coffee. So when that happens, it's just a message saying that you should just reduce your dose a bit.
Yeah.
But the thing about phenylalanine and the thing about most amino acids is you got to take them on an empty stomach.
Oh, that's key.
Yeah.
That's key.
If you don't, you're not going to get your money's worth. That's important.
Okay.
Amino acids need to be broken down by themselves. That's why normally in nature you don't get amino acids by themselves. You get them as a protein.
As a protein.
And they have to be broken down in a certain way for you to extract them, right? But if you're taking them individually, your digestion will just kill it. It'll destroy, and you won't get a good absorption there. So it's important if you take phenylalanine, take it in an empty stomach. For me, I'm above 150 pounds. I probably weigh 175 or something like that. I'm 5'10", 49 years old at this point, almost. And
coming up. It's coming up.
So for me personally, I take usually about 2,000 milligrams.
Okay, 2,000
on an empty
milligrams of
stomach.
phenylalanine.
Yeah, and that's what I take for me. That's my sensitivity level. It's going to be different for every person, but on average, it's going to be somewhere between probably, 1,500 to 2,500, that range. And there's a DL form, which sometimes they call DLP. It's just DL phenylalanine. It's the same thing, but the D is another, molecular form of it. That form, for one, it tends to be tolerated even better. So if you think you're not doing well with the L form because it's making you too jittery or it's just not working with you, you can take the DL form. It's even more well tolerated, and people will use this a lot specifically for pain control. So people with chronic pain sometimes will use, when they're doing the natural route for handling their pain, will sometimes use DL phenylalanine, and that's something that's fairly well documented. Some people will use that approach for managing pain or headaches or whatever. And the other thing is, lots of people suffer from caffeine withdrawals when they're trying to quit coffee.
Right.
And one of my sort of biohacks is, if you don't want to deal with that, just take some phenylalanine. You take that, you're not going to get a caffeine headache.
That is so good to know.
It's so easy. So if you're like, you know what, I just want to cut coffee for 2 weeks. So you cut cold turkey, right? From, 4 cups a day to 0.
Yeah.
Well, probably by day 2, you're going to have a headache, and it hurts. It's usually pretty intense when you get that type of withdrawal, because your brain gets so used to having the caffeine, which is chemically similar to other neurochemicals, it stops producing its own.
Yeah.
And so then it senses the lack, and the brain goes into kind of a bit of a chaos, right? Not only do you feel foggy, but you have this intense headache. Well, D-L-phenylalanine will give you all the focus that the caffeine gave you and nourish your brain by boosting your chemistry. It won't replace the chemistry. It boosts the chemistry naturally, and you won't get any of the headache.
Wow.
So it's fantastic.
That sounds like something I need to look into.
It is. People have done studies on memory, like for test taking and things like that. And phenylalanine is one of those things that boosts memory.
Excellent.
So
Excellent.
I love it.
Goodness. Wow. Wow.
So there are quite a few others that I experiment with from time to time, a lot of them. But I want to focus next on just a couple of herbs that I like to use.
Yeah.
And then it'd be great for you. It would be great to hear more about an herbal approach on a Chinese level.
Yeah, I think that's perfect segue.
In fact, one of the ones I'm going to mention is a traditional Chinese herb.
Ooh, okay.
Okay.
All right.
So there are 3
Okay.
that I like to use together.
Can we save the Chinese herb for last?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay.
One is Withania somnifera, and that is
Somnifera.
in Ayurveda they call that ashwagandha.
Ashwagandha.
If I remember correctly from Ayurvedic school, there was a reference to horse sweat.
I think it means horse smell weed or something.
Yeah, like
horse
sweat
smell
of a
herb.
horse or something like
Yeah,
that.
it stinks.
Yeah, and it's sometimes referred to as Indian ginseng. It's not a ginseng,
Not a ginseng.
but
yeah.
when they use ginseng with quotes around it
Uh-huh.
to refer to a stamina-producing, longevity-producing herb, a lot of times they say a ginseng, right? Maca is South American ginseng. Eleutherococcus is Siberian ginseng, but it's not really ginsengs.
Right. Tea is English coffee, right? In the same way. Yeah,
it's
not quite the same
a true
thing.
ginseng, but it is something that's used in a lot of longevity formulas, and it is adaptogenic, like most ginsengs, right? It has a quality of strengthening the tissues of the body, according to the traditions, boosting and supporting sexual health by increasing libido in males and females, increasing production of they call shukra, the sexual fluids in the body, moisture in the body, generally emboldening health, like making someone more resistant to disease, more resistant to stress.
I believe isn't ashwagandha in a lot of supplements to help with like adrenal fatigue,
100%.
helps with fluctuations there.
From what I've learned, it reduces the toxic cortisols of the body, so it helps you to manage those cortisol production in the body and replenish it.
Yeah.
And so it's good for the glandular system. It's in Chawanprash, the medicinal jam, the sweet jam that they make that has all those herbs and jaggery sugars and different things.
Yeah.
And it helps with sleep. So people who are putting it in a sleep formula, it helps to stabilize and calm and support the nervous system.
Okay.
And so it works well with the other 2. Bacopa Moneri is also called Brahmi. And that is also adaptogenic and good for all three dosha types, Vata, Pitta, Kapha. And it's been studied a lot in memory and with students and things like that. So they say
the name again?
Bacopa Moneri,
Bacopa Moneri.
or in Ayurvedic terminology, they call it Brahmi, Brahmi, Brahmi.
Yeah.
After about 8 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks, that's when the real noticeable changes happen, where cognition, memory, things like that tend to improve in tests. When you do cognitive tests and memory tests, that's when you really start to see it kind of show. So it is something that you take on a daily basis. And when it's supported with the ashwagandha, it's kind of synergistic, because ashwagandha also has an effect on memory, long-term memory. And the final one is sometimes confused with Brahmi.
Oh.
And it's so confused. I want to mention this because it's kind of significant. I was doing my research for my Ayurvedic college paper that I was doing. And there were all these mistaken identity kind of situation where Bacopa Moneri was confused with Centella Asiatica.
Centella Asiatica.
Which is Gotu Kola.
Gotu Kola.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's kind of understandable because they have similar uses and similar effects on the body. But if you look at the plant, they don't look the same. You can, but what's frustrating from the consumer standpoint is you'll see companies that say Brahmi on the bottle.
Okay.
You'll flip it around and you'll see that it's actually Centella Asiatica and not Bacopa Moneri.
Okay.
But it's crystal clear. Brahmi is Bacopa Moneri and Centella Asiatica is Gotu Kola.
Yeah.
They're not the same.
Not the same plant.
And there are some companies out there that when you order Brahmi, you're actually getting Centella Asiatica. So you should make sure that you look at that.
Yeah, that's like ordering aspirin and getting Tylenol.
Right.
It's like not that that's always going to be a problem, but that's not what you ordered.
Exactly. Yeah. So it really annoyed me actually when I went through that. So,
Interesting.
but on the upside, I do take them together.
Okay.
Because they do have a synergistic effect on and what I found is that when I take even them by themselves, I'm also able to focus more. You just have to take enough.
Okay.
So my tummy can tolerate more Gotu Kola than it can Brahmi.
Okay.
For some reason. I think when you exceed a certain amount of Brahmi or Bacopa, it can kind of give you a little bit of diarrhea or make your tummy feel a little uncomfortable.
Okay.
So for me, the dosage works where I'll take somewhere between, average would be about 250. So let's just say from 200 to 400 milligrams is about the sweet spot for Bacopa. Whereas Gotu Kola or Centella Asiatica, you can take more of, and your tummy usually tolerates that, no problem.
Okay.
But the effects are very similar on the mind. It allows for a calm, focused state. So as a meditation aid, you won't feel irritated. You won't feel like like you remember in Vipassana courses, they don't recommend you do lots of coffee and things like that because it can, when you're in those prolonged states of meditation, those agitations to your nervous system can almost be their own waves of sensation.
Yeah, and you end up feeling it a lot.
Yeah. So things like Brahmi or Gotu Kola are more harmonizing and balancing to your psyche and stabilizing. They're not at all stimulant.
Okay.
But they do aid in concentration and focus.
Very
so what I
nice.
found for my own anecdotal experience was when I did Gotu Kola and Brahmi, is that I was able to access my visual perception and hold images in my mind for longer periods of time.
Wow. Great stuff. Let's just quickly review. Can you just list all the substances that you named?
Yeah. So we have a couple different forms of magnesium, the magnesium glycinate or glycinate as I pronounce it. There's magnesium L-threonate, And then, of course, there's fish oil, so omega-3 fatty acids, right? There is the phenylalanine, the amino acid, so L-phenylalanine and D-L-phenylalanine.
Great.
Taken either one or together. There is the choline supplements, so either citicholine or my preference, which is alpha GPC. And then there are the herbs, the three herbs that I mentioned. Bacopa Moneri, or Brahmi, Centella asiatica, or Gotu Kola, and Withania somnifera, which is ashwagandha.
Ashwagandha. Yeah. Great. Okay. Fantastic. Okay.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. You know, we're gonna do some other episodes that continue with this theme of boosting cognitive ability, enhancing our ability to think and problem solve and get creative and things like that. So there's going to be more episodes to come. And I think in this one, we really wanted to focus on your unique experiences and research on this topic of nootropics. So my piece that I'm just going to add here is real simple. This is kind of a little nightcap, you know, and we'll wrap this one up. Is the Chinese herbal side of this, of enhancing cognitive ability. Again, this is a huge topic, you know, from a Chinese medicine perspective, and that's not what we're doing right now. What we're doing right now is just we're giving some nuggets. You know, we're getting into some nuggets here. And earlier, we when we were talking about Ltheanine, we were talking about matcha, and that is just that's a green tea. But I just want people to just take a moment, and you can pick up any article and there, green tea, green tea, green tea. Hold on, let's back up a second. Be careful here. Let's just explain what matcha is, right? So to those who are not familiar with this, matcha is actual green tea that is stone ground into a fine powder. It's delicious. I think it's delicious,
I love
right? You put, half a teaspoon maybe, in a little bowl with just a tiny amount of water in a bowl, about an eighth of the amount of space in the bowl. It's a very, very small amount. And then they whisk it up with a little bamboo whisk. And people don't have to do that at home. You could easily buy matcha kits and things. But I think if you look at most sources, they'll say that matcha has about 130 times more antioxidant ability than just green tea, because you're actually consuming the leaf particles itself. And that's very, very simple. It can be a little pricey to get some good quality matcha, but that's just the one I wanted to start with, because it's simple, it's easy, it's very well researched. I've been told that all the tea ceremony ladies in Japan live a very, very long time, as rumor has it. So I just wanted to mention that. But the other reason I'm mentioning green tea, matcha, is because my favorite herb that I think is, again, generally pretty safe, considering that a person's in decent health and isn't taking competing medications and all the stuff we talked about in the beginning of the show, is American ginseng.
Yep.
And the reason I'm mentioning these two things together is because, just a little reminder, this is something a lot of people don't know, is that green tea and ginseng compete for absorption, and they're not supposed to be used at the same time. They can be used together. It's fine. You can do it, but you don't want to take them at the same time, because you decrease the value of the ginseng that you just ingested. And ginseng is expensive.
Yes, it is.
You're going to pay a little bit for it. It's not, ridiculously expensive. It can be. So I wanted to get that out of the way, and talk about my favorite herb for this topic, which is American ginseng, Xiangshen. Okay, American ginseng. So we have to have just a very brief lesson on ginseng. Ginseng is a Chinese herb, and my personal opinion is I do not recommend that people just try taking ginseng on their own without really looking into it and learning a lot more about it and talking to a Chinese herbalist about it. Ginseng can cause some difficulties for some people. It can cause some stomach upset. It can cause heart palpitations. It can cause blood pressure fluctuations, headaches, dryness. It can increase pressure in your head. It can create some rashes, bloody noses. There's a lot of things that can happen when you take ginseng. Ginseng is a little bit warm to the body. And then there's Korean ginseng. So my favorite ginseng is American ginseng. And so what I'm talking about first is Chinese ginseng.
Because America.
Yeah, because America, right? And then if you take Chinese ginseng, and there's like a way of processing it, is like a steaming process that they do in Korea, and they make Korean ginseng, which kind of has a red color to it. It becomes hot. It goes from warm to hot. And personally, just me, I cannot even take Korean ginseng. It messes me up. It's too hot, right? So I'm warning people out there. There's Chinese ginseng, there's Korean ginseng, right? And you need more guidance to take those things, in my professional opinion. You don't ever want to take ginseng if you're catching a cold. I've heard a lot of people say...
It feeds the cold, doesn't it?
It feeds the cold. So the idea is ginseng makes you stronger. It also makes other things in you stronger. So if you have an invasion of a pathogen, it can feed that pathogen and make that pathogen stronger. And one of the things that'll happen, if you have a cold or a flu and you take ginseng by itself, I'm not saying you can't take ginseng in combination with other herbs if it's appropriate, but if you take it by itself, it'll cause your fever to spike. You get a hotter fever.
Yeah.
And symptoms get worse. Sore throat gets worse. The person's white phlegm that they're coughing up can turn green. Blood flecked in their sputum. You see what I mean? So
it's crazy.
it is a delicate thing. Now, American ginseng is what I really want to talk about. American ginseng is cold in nature. The other ginsengs are warming to the body, not American ginseng. American ginseng is cooling, and it generates fluids and moisture in the body, but it still has an ability to strengthen the function of your heart, your lungs, and your digestion. Which, if you translate that from Chinese medicine concepts, what that would do is, it does have an effect on those organs, but it really is going to sort of brighten up your shen, your mind. And American ginseng can really increase focus without agitation. If you take too much of it, you're going to learn a lesson and realize you took too much, and it can have some effects, right? So I'm not saying it's completely without potential side effects, right? There's something there, but American ginseng is generally tolerated better. It tends to be way less agitating, or if you take it and you do feel a little agitated, be happy you didn't take other kinds of ginseng, because you probably would do much better with the American ginseng.
Yeah.
Most people tolerate it quite well. It gives you energy, both physical and cognitive. And ginseng also calms the spirit from a Chinese medicine perspective, calms the mind. So again, like our discussions about caffeine and Ltheanine and things like that, it gives you a jolt of energy, but it's a peaceful energy. It's a calm type of energy. And I just love American ginseng. It's a fabulous substance, and it's homegrown, right?
Yeah. Because America.
And all ginsengs are very nice looking plant with these little red berries on them. And
can you eat them?
That's an interesting question. I don't know. I don't know if you can eat them or not. The root of ginseng, the word ginseng comes from the Chinese word zhenshen. So it sounds like zhenshen, and Americans didn't know what to call it. So ginseng, they just called it ginseng. So zhenshen means man root, because if you look at the root, it has a bulb up at the top that looks like a head. It has a body that looks like a human, and
It has a bulbous head.
Has a bulbous head. Yeah, boy, why does that ring a bell?
That?
And then it has these strands that come off the roots that look like arms and legs. So in ancient times, they looked at the root as looking like a person. So they, used their logic and thought, well, if it looks like a human, it must be good for humans. And so then that's kind of how ginseng was discovered. But throughout old folklore from Asia, there are various stories about a young child showing up wearing a red hat or a red scarf or a red bib or something like that. And this child comes in and somehow is solving problems or being of benefit to the people, whether it's monks or, whoever it is. And then usually in the story, if you follow the child back out into the wilderness, it jumps back into the ground and is an old ginseng root. So what they say
so
is
cool.
that old ginseng roots, because the older the better, because it's had a lifetime to build up its ingredients that are inside of it that have its magic. That old ginseng roots, when they get really, really, really old, they can leave the ground as young children. And it's a metaphor to remind us that ginseng creates youth and longevity, both longevity and youth together.
Wow.
Which is a nice little metaphor. So there we go. So that's kind of my contribution.
That is so cool. And I was thinking before when I mentioned that, coffee, a solution to the jitters of coffee is to add Ltheanine, and then you get like even more bang for your buck plus the no jitters.
Yeah.
I've always thought of coffee as being kind of heating and drying.
Yeah.
And little, obviously, maybe even agitating, maybe in excess. But do you think ginseng, the American ginseng, seems like it would be harmonious to add if you took some ginseng with the coffee? I don't know. What do you think of that?
I think you just explained what I do on many mornings.
Okay. Yeah.
I do.
I like it.
Yeah,
I mean,
I like it. I like to add American ginseng at the same time I'm taking coffee. Well, the coffee does make you sweat. Even on a microscopic level. I mean, even if you don't feel super sweaty,
diaphoretic.
You are sweating when you take coffee. It is a diaphoretic. It is used in Chinese medicine to release the exterior, treat things like headaches and that stuff that coffee is known to affect.
In Ayurveda, they say it's like kapha types, right? The ones that are, moist and heavy, right? So the water earth types, they're the types that in Ayurveda, they tend to say they're the only ones that really should be drinking coffee. The kapha should be drinking coffee.
Yeah.
Because they can handle it.
Definitely. At different body types.
And it's diaphoretic, so it causes them to release moisture and they accumulate moisture too much, usually.
There is a Chinese formula called Chiang Maisan, and that means generate the pulse powder, that has Chinese ginseng and then 2 other ingredients. One of them is Ophiopogonus, which is called Maimendong, and it's cool and it generates fluids in the body. And then another ingredient called Wu Weizi, Schisandra. That means like Wu Weizi means like 5 flavored seed. Okay, and those 2 are generating of fluids, and the Wu Weizi, the Schisandra, is astringing to the body. It causes you to hold on to fluids.
Wow.
And there are times when I'll have coffee with some Chiang Maisan because the coffee is an exterior resolving thing that causes diaphoresis, and the Chiang Maisan restrains diaphoresis, and so you get that boost without losing your qi and yang. But by sweating, we say you lose energy when you sweat.
Sure.
That you can take Chiang Maisan to do that, but I wouldn't recommend Chiang Maisan to just anybody. Don't just go buy that formula and take it. American ginseng would be fine.
Okay, and I don't want to diverge too far, but I seem to have a memory of Ganoderma being an aspect that's blended with coffee. Why would that be?
Yeah, Ganoderma. So Ganoderma is lingzhi, right? That's the
mushroom.
The mushroom. Yeah, the Ganoderma mushroom. That mushroom is actually, it belongs to the spirit calming or like the mind quieting category. It's used for insomnia, for anxieties.
Similar to Ltheanine.
Similar to Ltheanine.
That makes sense.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
So put little mushrooms in your coffee.
You're making my wheels turn right now. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Okay. And then there was another thing that occurred to me when you were talking about Korean ginseng. When you were talking about how they're steaming Chinese ginseng with a hot herb.
I'm not quite sure what the process is. That's kind of a different profession. It's the pharmacy profession, but yeah.
It just sort of occurred to me that since I've heard that there's a ginseng mafia. Like for the very expensive ginsengs, there are literally mafiosi, like families that make money fraudulently selling low quality ginsengs and stealing more expensive ginsengs, and people murder and steal and because some of the ginsengs can be really expensive.
Yes, they can be. If you find a real ancient mountain ginseng, there aren't a whole lot of them out there.
Yeah,
that's like. I mean, that's better than winning the lottery. I mean, you can make a lot of money off that. Those ginsengs, by the way, are very, very powerful. You only
Yes.
use tiny amounts. But yeah.
A friend of mine gave me a small piece of what he said was a ginseng. It was red, so it was probably Korean.
Yeah.
And he said it was very expensive. And strangely, he kept it in his refrigerator. And he used a knife and he cut me off a bit. And my body couldn't handle it.
Oh, what happened? What did you feel?
Okay. Hopefully this isn't TMI. It probably is for some people, but I'm just going to share it anyway because it's the authenticity show.
Yes, let's be authentic about it.
Not only did I feel wired, but I had like a couple of nocturnal emissions that night.
Oh, yeah.
It was like so intense that I felt wired, and I felt like I was just bouncing off the walls. And of course, at night I had a nocturnal emission. It was just like,
exactly.
my body is just like, it had to release some energy. It just did, And I woke up, I was just like, whoa, what the hell was that? And I realized it was the ginseng.
Yeah, it created
That's
too
the
much.
only thing different I did.
Too much fire in your body.
It was way too much.
Yeah, way too much fire.
So I really just noticed the difference between the pharmacological action on my body between, like the standard ginseng you could get in the store and this really He said the small little chunk that was maybe an inch or two long. Mm-hmm. I think he said it was a couple $100. It was like $250 or something like that.
Yeah.
And so he gave me this little sliver. Mm-hmm. So I was probably eating a, $15, $20 sliver of ginseng or something.
Yeah.
And
it's a nice gift.
Yeah, it was. It was nice. He was just letting me try it out.
Yeah. And the lesson there
too much.
is your body didn't need it. You were young.
Yeah.
I'm sure, and the whole deal.
It was probably 30.
Yeah. If you were 80, you'd probably been like, I'm ready to go.
Yeah, probably.
You'd have been ready.
Yeah.
Could you imagine if somebody took too much of that?
I can. Well, the things that you're talking about, like the nosebleeds and all that kind of, I can completely imagine that, especially the headaches and all that. It was too rich for me.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe, like you say, maybe there'd be a call for that at some point.
Yeah, and I would also just want to add real quick is like you go to the stores and if you buy ginseng from a shop or something, you got to be careful because it should be a little yellow. If it's got some yellowish color to it, then that's a decent sign because it's called Chinese white ginseng if you buy that kind.
Yeah.
And what they'll do is they'll steam it and extract a lot of the ingredients out of it, and then they're selling you something that's been drained of its essence, so to speak, and that's too white.
I was
do that.
just going to get into that when I mentioned the steaming of the Korean ginseng because it occurred to me that if it's really that potent and it's expensive, when you steam it, that's an opportunity to collect the drippings and then sell that instead of keeping it with the herb. So potentially you could oversteam something, replace it with that dark reddish color,
add some dye,
and then add some dye to it. And then
there's all kinds of dirty tricks.
But then you're kind of keeping your essence, making teas or whatever, and then you're kind of stealing from the customer. So it seems like there's a lot of potential for fraud.
Yeah,
I
think that's the herbal equivalent of embezzlement.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not way uncool.
Definitely not cool.
That's why it's better to get if you're going to buy
spice trade.
Yeah, right. If you're going to buy ginsengs, in this case like American ginseng, it's better to use a Chinese herb company to buy it if you can.
Yeah, I was thinking that maybe American ginsengs might be an exception because they're based here. Like we have these. I mean, it grows in Wisconsin,
Indiana. My grandfather used to pick American ginseng over the summer when he was a kid in Indiana.
Wow!
And they would sell it to some people that would send it to China.
And there are some strange legends about it. Like they can't be true, but maybe correct me if I'm wrong. But that at night that they glow, and so they would shoot like an arrow that had like a colored arrow, and then they would shoot at that light, and then in the morning they would go and check where that arrow was, and they would be able to locate it.
I'm so glad you brought that because
that seems silly to me.
I've looked into this because I've heard the same story, and I think you and I might have heard this from the same source,
maybe.
And this is somebody who lived in Wisconsin who said that they're bioluminescent.
No.
No?
I know who you're thinking of.
Okay.
And this was many years before that.
Oh, okay.
It's an old story.
Okay,
I read about it actually.
I had heard
time ago.
They're bioluminescent at night.
Yeah.
And that if you walk towards the plant, it feels the vibrations and the luminescence goes away.
Right.
So you have like fluorescent or orange colored arrows. And so at night, if you see something glowing, you shoot an arrow over there. And then in the morning, you go back and find the arrows, and you'll usually find the plant. I've tried to verify this. I can find nowhere in the literature that ginsengs are bioluminescent.
Yeah.
But maybe, but I just can't confirm that. But it's a pretty cool.
It is an interesting
thing. I hope
idea.
it's true.
Yeah, I love fun stuff like that.
I totally hope it's true.
That's
Yeah.
cool. There was one other thing I was going to ask you about. What was it? I don't remember, but I am glad that you brought up the tea thing, because that was when you asked me to go over the list again. I forgot about Ltheanine, so I'm glad you covered that, because Ltheanine was the other one. And I love that we have this list, because I have 30 other things that I play with and experiment with, but I don't want to mention them because it's too easy to mix it wrong or get too much of something, or it's a little fuzzier. And I'm more of the experimenter. I love to experiment with these things. I'm bolder about that. I've been a biohacker for such a long time. I love to try to get the most out of my life, and that's my choice to make those. But the things that we talked about today are pretty safe and easy to get, and you can put them all together. Everything we mentioned, including the ginseng, all of them could be taken as a morning, what we call a nootropic stack. Which is a combination, right? Any kind of a stack. That's the term that nootropic enthusiasts like to say.
Yeah, that's their version of a formula.
Yeah, they call it a stack.
Yeah.
And you can buy pre-made stacks if you want to. There's lots of them out there. I've tried a bunch of them. I just like to experiment with the individual things and then start to combine them myself and mix and alter the quantities until I get it to where it fits my experience perfectly.
Yeah, like you're just trying garlic and butter together to see how that is, and then butter and pepper.
Exactly, exactly. But anyway, this was a great conversation. I'm glad we did it. We have so many more elements to this we could add maybe in future episodes. But I hope this was enjoyable to the listener as well.
Oh yeah, me too. We could talk for much longer on these things.
Absolutely.
But not this time.
It's a big focus of our life.
Yeah. All right.
Great sharing with you as always.
Likewise.
You've been listening to The Authenticity Show with your hosts, Carlos Casados and Satch Purcell. My name is Oliver Altine. I produce this show. I also wrote our theme music, which you're listening to right now. Please subscribe to The Authenticity Show if you haven't already done so, and find us on social media. That means follow us on Facebook, like us on Instagram, and check out our YouTube page. And you can find our website at authenticityshow.com. Thanks for listening, and have an authentic day.